Hey, what's going on? What's going on? What's happening? This your girl Tiffany here live in effect. Let me make sure you guys can hear me. So I have been away for a while and I had to take some time off because of course I had to get my tooth pulled. So but I feel a little bit better now. Yeah. But I came on here because I've been thinking about this for quite some time. And I've been wondering, why don't black people in the conscious community talk enough about Central West Africa and the history of the diaspora? Why do you not hear much about Central West Africa and the diaspora history? And what do I mean about the diaspora? I'm talking about African American history, okay? I'm talking about history in Canada, the Caribbeans. Dunning, please do not start there because now you're about to get your feelings hurt. I'm about to hurt your feelings, my boy. I'm about to hurt your feelings. What do you think diaspora history mean? Don't play stupid on my page. Don't do it. You can do that shit with somebody else, but not me. Because if you really that adamant about no, nigga, diaspora does not just mean abroad. It does not mean abroad. Diaspora means the Americas. That's including North America, Central America, Latin America. That's the diaspora history. Okay? So again, let's not play stupid. Don't bring that stupid shit over here. Please don't. Don't do that. Don't bring that stupid shit over here. But anyways, let me get back to my question. No, seriously. Why don't we talk enough about Central West Africa history and the diaspora history as much as people talk about ancient Egypt, the indigenous culture, the Moorish history? And I know that these conversations are very common with African Americans because that's the first thing that people start off with. That's the first thing people start off with. They start off with Egypt. They'll start off with the indigenous people or the population, the Moors. Why? Because if we want to be truly honest, right? Let's be 100% honest. Our descendants were not indigenous people. A lot of our descendants were not Moors, nor were our descendant Egyptian, right? They were Central West Africans that were brought here to the diaspora. So why not talk more about that? I mean, if people are truly say they're proud to be African American, right? Or African descendant, why not talk about those history? Why not talk about the greatness of black people here in America and what they have contributed? And I'm not talking about just civil rights either. I'm not talking about just civil rights either. I'm not even just talking about just slavery. And to be honest, we don't even know enough about slavery. All right, I'm gonna have to put bro on timeout because he's starting to get on my nerves. Hold on, let me put your ass on timeout, Dunny. Okay. I'm sorry, I had to put somebody on timeout because they was getting on my nerves with that. I told them come over here with that stupid shit, but he did. Anyway, yeah, I had to put him on timeout, Ronald. I'm not with it. Not with it. But no, Seriously. Because it's really getting sad at this point. And I saw somebody did a live talking about, do we still need to talk about African American history? Or African American history, is it still relevant in 2025? If you have to ask that question, if African American history is still relevant in 2025, then that is sad. That is really fucking sad. No, that is absolutely sad. As a Black person, if you have to ask if African American history is still relevant in 2025, that is fucking sad. Because anybody that is of African descent, that is a Black person in America, they should want to study. They should want to study and want to be adamant about their own ancestors and what they have done and what they have contributed in this society. You should want to be adamant enough about what they've done in Central West Africa. But a lot of people don't show those admiration the way they do with Egypt or the Moors or the indigenous people, and they call themselves indigenous, or let alone the Hebrew Israelites or just Israel. But everybody want to talk about those things but skip over Central West Africa. Now there are people who are doing the work. There are people who are actually getting into the discussion about the history of Black people in America and going far back studying about those in Africa, where our ancestors came from. Okay? There are those who are actually doing it, but guess what? They will never gain the exposure. They will not ever be looked at as being popular. They will not receive a lot of credit because it's not the most popular thing to talk about. It's like you run away from yourself. It's like you run away from who you are. Malcolm X was going to, yeah, he did. And as a matter of fact, Malcolm X wrote a book about African American history. Okay? It's called The Afro American History According to Malcolm X. And this is based on his studies, based on his research. And I have showed the book before. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show it again. Well, I'll find it later. I know I got the book laying somewhere around here. I'll find it. But no, seriously, man. Because now it's starting to make me question, is there internal self-hatred that's really going on to why people won't be proud to say, hey, I am a part of these individuals. And this is the history of our ancestors. And this is what they have done, what they have contributed. I mean, is it that much self-hatred to where you don't want to actually study about the history of those in Central West Africa or those here in or those in America? I'm just trying to figure this out. I'm trying to really understand this. A lot of the people in Central and West Africa migrated from Egypt. The ancient Egyptian looks like West African. And see, here's an example right here. He said the ancient Egyptian looked like West Africans. And that's not necessarily true. That's not necessarily true. Not all of them look like West Africans. Not all of them do. And we don't know for a fact if many of the Central West African people migrated from Egypt. We don't really know that to be a fact. But we do know that we come from a descendant of those people. That we do know. We do know that. And I'm not ever saying that don't ever discuss about Egypt or Egypt should not be the topic of the conversation. But it seems like Egypt has been the center of all the topics, out of all the topics that Black people talk about. That's been the most discussed. Everything else is just kind of like thrown on the bus. Even it's going to be Egypt or it's going to be the Moorish history. You know, the Moorish people that came up out of Northwest Africa. And all the other pseudo stuff out there. But Central West Africa will be the last topic, the last subject that anybody will touch on. It's the last subject people don't want to touch on for whatever reason. And I'm trying to figure that mess out. There is not one single human being on planet void of ancestry from the continent. No. But in our case, I'm talking about African Americans. I'm talking about Black people. Why do we not want to embrace it? We have a high percentage of Central West African ancestry. Okay. We have a very strong percentage of that. And a lot of people know this, especially those in the conscious community, those who took a DNA test, they know this. You know it. So why not just say, hey, let's embrace that. Let's start putting that into the forefront. And you would think more and more people would start bringing this up into the conversation, right? And having interaction about it. And start doing more research and studies. But it's only very few who's actually doing it. And I'm trying to figure out for the life of me why. Why? A lot of Black people prefer to be associated with Egypt and Arab Africa because they are ashamed of their West African and Central African origins because they are dark skinned and Black. Okay, that's a plausible answer. But why do you think that people are ashamed of the dark skinned and Black skinned Africans? Why are they ashamed of those people? What is the reason behind that? Why? Why? Is it because we were taught that Black is ugly? Black doesn't mean anything? Black represent lower status? Why? I think Black prefer pseudo information rather than the historical accuracy. And I think that's what it is too. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I think so. I think so. I honestly believe that. I honestly believe that. I truly believe that. I don't think they want to be affiliated with the slavery. Now, here's the thing. It's a lot that we don't know about slavery, for one. And there's so much more about Central West Africa beyond slavery. Beyond slavery. We talking about diet, we talking about cultural practice, spirituality, even down to science, which not too many people talk about, not too many people discuss about how the Central West African played a role in STEM. Before there was a STEM, it was natural philosophy, but not too many people going to discuss about that either. Brainwashing causes self-hatred. Everything begins in the mind. I agree. I agree with that. It does. But it also takes a person to want to get out of the mindset and branch out on their own to seek more information. Right? It's up to you. If you want to find out more information, you would eventually have to get out of your mindset. You would have to step out your paradigm and say, you know what? I need to find out more because there's something that is missing. Yes, that is true. However, before before the transatlantic slave trade even took place, and before the Saharan slave trade, you had kingdoms. Again, you had cultural practices. You had those who study natural philosophy, which is now called modern day science, right? But before there was modern day science, there was natural philosophy. And again, a lot of history, you got to understand history in itself. It's going to always be good, the bad, the ugly. Who wants to hear bad stuff about history? Nobody. Who wants to hear ugly things about history? Nobody. But that's a part of life. That's a part of history in itself. Everything is not going to be good. And that's something that we have to accept as a people, that everything is not going to be a feel-good rhetoric. It's not going to be romanticized. It's not going to be something that's very complacent. It's not going to be something that's going to make us comfortable. We have to get used to that. So yes, we did, but we also, our ancestors also, before they came over here as slaves, they were doing productive things. Hey Kevin, how you doing? Please. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Absolutely. Yes, they damn do. And you know what? That's fucking sad. And I'm gonna tell you, they claim more about being indigenous than being African American or being Black American. They claim to be more indigenous than being Black American. That's the part that's really fucking, it's fucking sad to me. It's fucking pathetic. African American ancestors came from the migrant parts of the continent, not just West Africa. I didn't say just West Africa. I say Central West Africa. Jamin, that's why I say Central West Africa. I didn't just say West Africa. I say they came from Central West Africa. So you got the Central region and you got the Western region. All right. And I'm curious about those from South Africa. And the reason why I'm curious about the South African people, because I noticed that there is something that we have in common with them. And that's the Bantu expansion. So with the Bantu expansion, right, that makes me question about the people from South Africa as well. But that's another study and research that would have to be done. But more so about Central West Africa in this case. Let's see. Traditional Central West Africa based on the Congo River, which was named Zaire, meaning the river that swallows all other rivers. Kikongo language groups of Bantu. Oh yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the Congo because you'll realize that we have a lot of Congolese practice over here in America too, in certain parts of the South, especially. You know, there's some Congolese tradition taking place, Angolan tradition. So I'm glad that you brought that up about the Congo. But but I wonder if the Congo River spread it over towards South Africa. That's what I'm curious about that. But that would have to be a study and that would have to be a research. That's something I would have to personally dig into because I know there's a lot more to it than what we're just being told. Also, people would rather create and live in their own matrix within the matrix rather than leave the matrix, period. But how do you leave the matrix? How do you leave the matrix? How can't you leave the matrix? That's the question. That's true. And then also what people don't know is that the Native Americans had African slaves as well. That's the part that people don't even discuss about the Native Americans. They also owned slaves. But yeah, it's very common for our grandparents or our great grandparents to say that they mother, their father were Indian or their grandmother was Indian. It's very common to hear that. Now, there are those of us, depends on what region of the United States that you are from, that have Native American ancestry. Like if you're from Oklahoma, you'll come across Black people who have a lot of Native American ancestry, right? And if you somebody that's from Louisiana and you Creole, chances are you got some Native American ancestry as well. So there are those who do, but there's a large percentage of Black people who don't have Native ancestry. but they have more European ancestry than they have native. I mean, we do. We have European ancestry than we would with native ancestry for the most part, because of our ancestors and their encounter with Europeans, whether it be like interracial relationship or the slave master and what he have done to the women who were enslaved during that time period. And then you had those again who had interracial marriages going on. So it's a lot of factors that could be taking place. Central East African Kiswahili was a non-tribal language developed by the medieval Muslim to trade with the Bantu speaking Kikongo languages. You know what? I heard about Kiswahili being a non-tribal language, and it's still a language to this day that people speak. But you know what? And I also believe that about the Muslims. Yeah, I believe that because some of the Kiswahili language has some Arabic words to it, like the word imani, right? Imani is Arabic, that means faith. So, yeah, I could see that. Hmm. Mm-hmm. LBA told me the Nile River is in Mississippi and Egyptian pyramids are. They told you the Nile River is in Mississippi and Egyptian pyramids are everywhere. That's some indigenous nonsense that they model after, that they done picked up. But why am I not surprised about this? Yeah, there's gonna always be the good, bad, ugly, and the beautiful. Yeah. Wow. Hey, how you doing, Green Soap? Jason, how you doing? Bobo said West Africa was dominated by the medieval Songhai, Mali, and Ghana, which were Islamic kingdoms that were defeated by the Moors. Yes. And then that's another thing. And I'm glad you brought about the Islamic kingdom because a lot of people don't want to acknowledge or they don't want to admit that about 30% of Africans that were brought here to America were Muslims. They don't want to admit that. And they came about the region of Senegambia, Mali, right? The Ivory Coast areas. They don't want to admit that 30% of those people were Muslim. And you have those, especially in the atheist community, that will argue up and down about Islam and swear that, oh, our people were forced to convert to Islam and they were um they were invaded by the Arabs. And that's not 100% true. There was those who converted on their own will. But people won't tell you that. They don't want to talk about that. They'll skip over that and totally dismiss that out the picture. They'll act like as if Islam was not a part of the culture, or they would act as if they did not adopt Islam as part of the African culture. Along with practicing African spirituality. People don't want to talk about this, so they'll totally throw that under the bus. That's another thing. That's another thing that gets me. Let me see. So I'm going through the comments. Let's see. FBA thinks America is epicenter of life just to justify their excuse of being so insular about the world and not wanting to travel around the world. Pretty much so. I don't. Oh my God, please don't tell me anything else about what them folks said. Congo connects West Africa with Central Africa. Let me see. I saw a channel of a Neolite, Neo was it Naulet man saying Bantus in Africa and in America, Caribbean from slave trade are different, and he said nothing but negative things. I wonder what channel did you see this on, Jason? I want to know, but you know what? Of course, you're gonna have people that's gonna spin the narrative and come up with their own thoughts and say what they want to say. I mean, we can't expect for everybody to say something positive or constructive, whether it be here in America, whether it be in the other part of the diaspora, whether it be in Africa. We can't expect for everybody to be positive or have a positive mindset. So, West African culture surround the Niger River, and Northeast Africa was the Nile. I am too. I am. And I want to say shout out to them. Shout out to Benin. Shout out to Ghana. Um, well, the country. Of course, Liberia, Sierra Leone, just to name a few. They are really opened up doors for African Americans to come and repatriate to the land and gain dual citizenship. So shout out to them. And also shout out to Kenya. Because you got a lot of black people going over there to Kenya as well. So at least Africa is doing something. People say, well, what are the African people doing for us? Are they going to give us reparation? Why they don't give us reparation? Well, they allow people to repatriate. They allow people to live over there in the lands, buy property over there, right? Now, there's some people that talk about their experiences. Some people say they done had bad experiences being over there. And then there are those who say they was welcomed with open arms, and they was welcomed with love and respect, and they were treated as if they were part of the African culture. So, and you still got people that live over there in those countries until this day. So let's not act like those in Africa never open up the doors of opportunity for the people in the West, because they did, and they're still doing it. Sierra, the singer here from Atlanta, Sierra just got her citizenship with Benin because they found out that, I think she found out she had Benin ancestry. So you got a lot of celebrities, black celebrities, that's going over there to places like Ghana and Benin. She just got her citizenship. So it's happening. Something new. I will look into that. Yes, most African Americans have more yeah, European American blood or ancestry than Native American blood. Most African American do. Most African Americans carry more European ancestry than Native American blood. But there's still a high number of African bloodline. But if you take a DNA test, if most black people took a DNA test, I'm quite sure they see that they have about 7, 8, 9, or 10 or 12% of European ancestry, right? Than they would with Native American. And again, it depends on what region you from in America, right? You may have a little bit more of Native American bloodline that might be the same amount of your European ancestry. You might. It depends on where you are in America. But everybody don't have the same. But I mean, for the most part, most black people have European ancestry. And that's just what it is. They don't believe in DNA. Okay. So I have that amount too. I took, let's see, I took a 23andMe and Ancestry.com. Yep. Those are the two I took. So I think 23andMe says that I have about 91% of African ancestry, and Ancestry.com shows that I have 92%. So what's sad about these LBAs is that they just want the cash payment reparation so they can live off the memory of past glory civilization as opposed to pursuing future glory civilization. Of course, and see what people don't understand is when it comes down to this reparation stuff, this is not a new fight. This is not a new fight. Reparation been a fight for a long time. And we talking about after the slaves were free, they began to fight for reparation. So this is not a new fight. It's something that's been going on for the longest. And we have to admit that here in America, we're not going to see reparation the way that we want it. I just don't see it happening in my lifetime. And then you have to go beyond just America, right? Before there was America, there was the colonies. And before the colonies, right, there was the European nations. Portugal, Spain, France, Britain. Those are the main nations that enslaved people, brought people over to the West, to the Caribbeans. So those nations gonna have to pay up for reparation too, if we gonna be honest. But I digress. Should content or character carry the day instead of ethnicity? Yes, character always matters. But when we talking about history, we got to go into that. We got to go into our origin. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Like history plays a factor, but nobody ever diminished character. No one ever said character doesn't matter to people, right? But when it comes to history, that's when ethnic background matters. And reason why, because we don't know enough. We have not been taught enough about who we are, about our lineage. So it does matter. It really matters a lot. So I'm not taking away what you're saying about character. I truly agree with you about that. But history matters, because that's a part of our culture as well. That helps to explain why we have the culture that we have as Black people. As far as why do we have a certain way we talk, the certain way we dress, certain way we act, certain type of music, the way we eat our food, the way we prepare our food. It tells a story about that. It tells a story about us. We basically evolved from the times of the charismatic anti-hero to the charismatic anti-intellectual, and the charismatic anti-intellectual just like to outdumb you just for shock value. I like how you put that. From anti-hero to anti-intellectual, and anti-intellectual to outdumb you just for shock value. I love the way you put that together. I love the way you put it together. Because that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what's going on. No, I will not. I will not. And I think that shit is dumb as hell. Am I boycotting African business? No, I'm not. Why? Why would I? What is the purpose? What is the need? Why am I boycotting African business? What have they done to me for me to boycott them? Why? I don't see a lot of Black people out here boycotting Asian business. I don't see a lot of people boycotting European businesses. I don't see people boycotting Indian business. So why am I boycotting? What's the reason? What are you getting out of it? What the hell are you getting out of that? Right there shows that you playing your role as the oppressor. You playing your part as the oppressor. If you participate in that nonsense, you are a part of the problem. If you partake into this nonsense, you are a part of the problem. And I don't want to have anything to do with that. Because what the hell? Why? Why in the fuck are we boycotting African business? What the fuck did they do to you? So no, I will not. Was the Moorish Empire of Iberia, which was ruled by the Afro-Asiatic Berber tribes. The first medieval European university and hospital were designed by the Afro-Asiatics. Mm. All right, thank you. Liberia was a U.S. colony built by African Americans, and Sierra Leone was an English colony from African British, which caused tribal warfare. Well, I don't. Hmm. What do you mean tribal warfare between Liberia and Sierra Leone, or you mean like tribal war as far as like the Africans from the West coming over into those lands? What do you mean? But a lot of people won't talk about Liberia. That's an interesting part. I mean, you would think at least, I mean, because a lot of our African ancestors went over there and it was a free colony. Hmm. And Sierra Leone, right? Here's the interesting part about Sierra Leone. They have a tribe called the Creole people. It's spelled Krio. Krio, the Creole people. The Creole people are consist of the liberated Africans, the Afro Caribbean, and if I'm not mistaken, African Americans. I have majority Nigerian Mali ancestry. All regions of the world have issues. People of the continent populated planet Earth. The world is our oyster. Okay, I get what you're talking about. I'm not talking about the planet Earth. The topic is Central West Africa, not the planet Earth. Okay? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about ancestry. We're talking about being descendant from those in Central West Africa, not the planet Earth. Not surprised. Yes, most of us are Nigerian ancestry. And you know why that is? Because a lot of the Nigerians, right, were sent over to the Caribbeans. And then the Caribbean people were brought over here to America. That's something that people don't want to talk about either. How the Caribbeans, the African from the Caribbeans, were brought over here to the United States. And then also, you got to look at the history of the Igbo landing. The Igbo people that were brought here in the state of Georgia, right? In the area called the Dunbar Creek, which is located in St. Simon Island, that explains it. So more than likely, we have Igbo and Yoruba ancestry. Now, that's still questionable as far as Christopher Columbus and the Moorish. Oh, hold on. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. Christopher Columbus followed the Moorish trade routes to the Americas, and he himself was a crypto Jew, Moreno, Converso, Marquiso, Moorish. Granada fell in 1492 from Reconquista Inquisition. But we don't know for a fact if the Moors themselves came to America. But I never heard that one about Christopher Columbus following the Moorish trade routes. I never heard about that, so I can't really say. I would have to look into that. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Hold on, let me go. Let me go up here. I just seen the comment. Hold on. I just seen the comment. Let me go back up, y'all. Let me see what time is it. Okay, it's 9:02. Let me see. Agree with what? What are you talking about, Dunny? You asked me, you said, wow, you agree with that. What are you talking about? What you speaking of? I agree with that. My ancestor came from Central West Africa. That's why I agree with. If that's a problem, then I don't know what to tell you, my boy. But I also agree that my ancestors did come from the South. And they came from the Midwest as well as the South. And I also got ancestors that came from the Caribbean. That's something I have to look into as far as the doctrine of discovery. I would have to look that up. But I will say this, one of the first Europeans to come to Africa were the Spanish and the Portuguese. Then the British came afterwards, and then the French. But yeah, the first Europeans were the Portuguese and the Spanish people. Hey, Inyame, how you doing, brother? How you doing, Inyame? How you doing? How you doing? How you doing? I didn't say you can't say FBA, but don't come with that dumb shit. That's all I said. Don't come with the goofiness. I ain't say you can't say FBA if that's what you want to say, but don't try to coerce me. That's the only thing I'm just saying. I don't know. Again, you missing the whole point. You missing what the subject of this video is about. Because if you would stayed on topic, right, you wouldn't be all over the place. But you're missing the whole point. Kudos for you. He don't know what the hell he gonna boycott against. He probably don't even really go to a lot of African businesses like that. So again, it would be stupid on your part. What the hell you boycotting against? What the hell are you boycotting against? But if you gonna have that attitude, have that same attitude for Europeans. Have that same attitude for Asian people. Okay? Make sure you have that same attitude. If not, then you're no different than white supremacy. You might as well be one with white supremacy if that's how it's gonna be. Because be honest with you, you ain't running shit in America. You don't own shit in America. You don't run this country. You just living here. So what type of power do you have? Or how much power are you going to gain by boycotting an African business? What type of power are you going to gain? How are you going to become successful? Because all you're going to do is hinder yourself. But if that's what you want to do, then you go right ahead and do that. Boycott what? Fufu? Wow. Man, cut that bullshit out. See, nah, I don't want to hear that shit. That's stupid. That's stupid as hell. You talking about they undermining and disrespect. But if you go to any other business, they doing the same shit too. That's just your ass being prejudiced. You just prejudiced and you just have a lot of self-hatred. And you play into that xenophobic BS. Talking about some, well, they undermining disrespectful. If you go to any other business, they disrespectful. But you ain't gonna boycott those businesses. When you go on your job, you're gonna get disrespected by your manager and supervisor, but you ain't gonna go on the strike because you know you need your job, right? Stop it. That's some goofy shit. Stop it. Stop being goofy, bro. Oh my God, these comments are funny and shit. Oh my goodness. Somebody said, what do you buy from African businesses? Hair extensions? Ah, okay. Let me stop. I got rid of them. So what, you gonna boycott oxtail? Like, you sound stupid, bro. Just say you won't eat at an African restaurant. Why would you boycott them? As if you gonna do something to hurt their business when there's plenty of other people that's gonna come in and buy stuff. What kind of shit, bro? I swear, y'all crazy, bro. Y'all crazy. I'm just reading this comment. So one of the original housing kingdoms was named Zaria, which was ran by the princess warrior Amina. LBA loved to claim they're being undermined by Africans, but never identify the specific deeds they do that undermines FBA's politically, economically, socially, legally, financially, and life. Why would you want to go somewhere where the people are fleeing? What you mean? Okay, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna let you think about that question. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put you back in timeout so you can think about what you just asked me. Okay? Because your logic is not making sense, sir. So I'm just gonna have to go ahead and put you on timeout. Sorry. So Yeah, back the time out you go. Hold on, let me. Yeah, I'm just gonna say this. All this talk about black immigrants undermining you. You're undermining yourselves. I have heard black people in America give so much harsh criticism to other black American businesses, right? I have heard black people in America say they won't shop with other black folks. They would not even spend money on black businesses. I have heard it. So I'm not going to go for the shenanigans about boycotting some African business. When y'all sit up here talk about you're not supporting black business owners. And again, if you're so adamant about being a black American, aka African American, why don't you study about the African Americans who made the contribution here in America? Why don't you talk enough about the history, huh? Why don't you go visit these historical sites? Why don't you go visit the plantation? You know why you won't do that? Because you know it's going to go back to the origin, go back to the root of what your ancestor, where your ancestor came from. You know it's going to go back to the origin, and a lot of y'all don't want to deal with that. A lot of y'all want to be in this box. You don't want to go back to that place. You don't want to travel back into time. You don't want to do that. You don't want to realize that you have a lot in common with those that are in the Caribbean, those that are in Central West Africa. You don't want to deal with that reality. So you want to be in a box. And that box is not working for you. And a lot of black people in America do not have any type of solution. They don't have any solution as far as what can they do economically, politically, for their own community. And I'm just being straight up with you as a black person myself who was born and raised in America. But you get a lot of folks scamming, running con games, taking advantage of people. Lying to the people. But they not setting a lot of political institution, social institution. And if they are, there's maybe a few they are actually putting dedication and work into the community. But on a grand scale, no. But you holler out, this my land, this my community, this my area. Well, then you need to start to step up to the plate. Step up to the plate. Start getting into more about history. Start getting into more about DNA. Start getting into more about STEM. Start getting into more about buying resources and doing something very political. But a lot of them are not doing that. You're wasting time going back and forth, creating these diaspora wars, which don't need to be and have no reason for being. And then a lot of you FBA folks talk more about Egypt. And don't say that you don't. Because I've been reading some of y'all comments. So it goes back to my question. Why don't people talk enough about Central West Africa and the diaspora history? If you say you love yourself and you love being black, you love your ancestors, right? Why don't you talk more about it? Why don't you have enough conversation around this subject matter? Why don't you talk about the tribes? Why don't you deal with the culture? Why you don't talk about the connection between the diaspora and Central West Africa? Because y'all don't like the reality? Y'all don't like what you gotta deal with? Y'all rather live in a fairy tale? Y'all rather be stuck in the box? And you want everybody else to be stuck in that box with you? Nah, nah. You know, to be honest, I didn't really read Claude Anderson books like that. I didn't really get into his books, but he used to give a lot of lecture, and I would watch his lecture. Now, I would say that he had some valid points. He made some good arguments, but I didn't really get into his books. Hmm. You know, people people would rather create an illusion. You know, humans cause the division amongst themselves, which cause a hindrance, especially when it comes to culture. Instead of just accepting what you are and who you are and where you come from, people want to try to create some type of fantasy that doesn't line up to what the actuality is. And the reality is that a lot of your fantasies does not match with history. A lot of your fantasy does not match with what the DNA say. That's the reality. But you live inside this box. And and as black people, we're going to continue to deal with these identity crises. If you think it's just going to stop right there with this FBA, the ADOS, and the Sulani, and all these other movements out here, it's going to continue to go on and on and on. Somebody else going to create some type of movement based on identity politics. Somebody's going to come up with another movement based on identity politics. And guess what? It's not going to go anywhere. It's going to go in circles. It's going to go in circles, in circle, in circle. You know what? I heard that book. I heard the book. I think I got that on PDF. But if I don't have it on PDF, then I'm going to get the physical copy. Whew. But no, seriously. What is the fascination about Egypt being greater than Central West Africa? I'm just really stuck on that. What is the fascination about Egypt being better than Central West Africa and the African diaspora history? What's the fascination? What is the fascination behind it? Because I feel like this is gonna go on for decades and 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 decades. What is the fascination about Egypt? So you don't think, hold on, Bobo, you don't think there is an ancient history about West Africa? You don't think there's an ancient West African history? Hmm? So there's no ancient Central Africa? I'm trying to figure this out. So what? So by West Africa being the medieval history, right? And Central Africa, according to what you typed on here, doesn't mean that the information is irrelevant. But we don't know how much percentage of Kush that West Africans have. Simple fascination of Egypt is based on European fascination of Egypt. You know what? I believe that to be 100% true. I believe that to be 100% true. But guess what? The Europeans also study a lot on West and Central Africa history as well. Hmm. They study a lot on Central West Africa, and they study a lot on African American being descendants from those regions. So they have a fascination behind that. And if you don't believe me, you can find books about African American history, going back to slavery and going into those regions, written by Europeans, written by European Americans at that. They have a big fascination about our history. As a matter of fact, they know about more about us than we do about us. They know more about our ancestors because they actually go and study in those country, in those regions more than we do. What Egyptian stuff? I ain't took no Egyptian stuff down. What Egyptian stuff? I want to know what Egyptian stuff you talking about, Dunn. I want to know what Egyptian stuff you talking about. Oh, that picture? The only picture I got that's that's Nefertiti. And of course, I got some posters of the affirmation of my odds and the Egyptian calendar. That's it. That's the only thing I have. So, what are you talking about? I still have it. I still have it on the wall. And I'm a person that likes art. So I like a lot of art, but that does not take away what I'm saying. That does not mean that I shouldn't be asking these questions. But that's not the only thing that I have up there. Let's see. I got a picture of Garvey. Let's see what else I got. I got a picture of an African sister. I'm looking to get some more paints. Looking to get some more artwork. But I'm not gonna stop asking those questions. So let's not try to spin the narrative. You're not gonna do that with me. You're not going to do that with me. I'm not gonna let you do that. I'm gonna stop you in your tracks. And for your information, I have spoke a lot about West African history on my channel. If you check out the videos that I posted on here, I have spoke on West African. I have spoke on African American history on this channel. So you can check out the playlist. Okay. Mhm. Somebody said you should get this book entitled "The Black World: Evolution to Revolution" by Prince Justice. Let me see. Let me see that. The Black World: Evolution to Revolution. Hmm. You know what, Kevin? Where's Kevin at? I'm gonna put that on the bucket list. Thank you for that recommendation. Yep. Oh, I know about Shank Auntie Job, the great elder. Absolutely. And how not okay, so let's reverse that question. How ignoring history is gonna help us to understand ourselves? How ignoring history gonna help us to understand ourselves? That's the question. How ignoring our history and who we are is going to help us to understand ourselves. Have you thought about that? Okay, I understand about the Berbers and the Moorish history or whatnot, but what I'm saying is How do we just put so much emphasis on those history and not enough on the Central West African history? How do we place so much emphasis on that? How we put so much how is it that our people can put so much emphasis on the Moorish history and Egyptian history more than they would on Central West Africa and the diaspora history? Why you cannot have those same emphasis? I get all that other stuff you're talking, but why not have that same attitude, the same pride, the same emphasis on Central West Africa and the diaspora history like you do with Egypt and the Moors? Okay, so for us as African Americans, right, or those in the diaspora, period, we have to go back into studying slavery, right? And then when you go past slavery, now you got to study the kingdoms in Central West Africa. Then when you get done studying the kingdoms, now you can go and study all those other places. But we got to take baby steps. We got to take it one at a time. We just can't say and go over here and go over there. Because then you're missing a lot of things. You're missing a lot of pieces. Yeah, I agree. And I'm not denying that. But we also lacking the knowledge of self. We're lacking the knowledge of our history. But I do agree with that. It's a lot of things that's going on. But we're lacking a lot of things regard to ourself, regard to our culture, regard to who we are. I guess you're trying to get me off the subject. I guess you think I shouldn't be talking about this, but that's not going to work. That's not going to work with me because the subject remains. I get what you're saying, but it's kind of like you're trying to distract me from speaking on this particular subject, and I'm not going to go for that. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, y'all gonna have to educate me. I don't know what a yuppie is. I don't know what a yuppie is or yuppie. You're gonna have to educate me on that. So, as you can see, once again, you're trying to distract me from the topic. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to stop me from speaking on the subject. Now, if you don't want to engage into the discussion, then I understand. That's fine. But this still going to be the subject matter. And I never said those things were not important. But this is the subject that I'm talking about here. And that's the subject I'm going to stick with. Now, if I want to talk about those things, I am going to talk about those and I'm going to bring those up. But again, I am not going to stop speaking on what I'm speaking on. Yeppy is a rich. Okay, 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 okay. Okay, so Kevin, I wouldn't say Dr. Claude Anderson is a Yeppy person or whatever. I would not use that term. All right. You know, he was just a person that was very passionate about the black community, and he was trying to come up with economic resources for the African American community as much as possible. So, um, I don't think he was trying to be like a rich white person or whatever or bougie, but he just wanted to make sure that black people had some type of resources. But again, like I said, I never read those books, so I can't really. So I can't really give you my full answer. What island are you from? Okay, he said I never called him a yuppie. I said he reminded me of those 80s yuppie with their economic philosophies. And no, yuppie is not an insult. Remember, they were buppies. I saw your comment from earlier. I did. I saw your comment about Prince Justice. I saw it. Absolutely. Every human needs to know their history, regardless. Yeah. Boy. So for those of you that's just tuning in, I'm basically as you can see at the topic, I'm just asking questions out of curiosity, and plus I'm sitting up here chatting with the people in the chat. The chat room going crazy right now, as you can see. They going in. So there's some people that bringing in good information. Then there's some people that's coming in, interrogating, and there's some back and forth debates going on over here. Um, so yeah, I'm just chatting with the people in the chat right now. So thank you guys for tuning in. For those of you just coming in. Patrice Lumumba, the first prime minister of the independent Congo who fought against colonialism and advocated national unity. Yes. And he also was influenced by the concept of Pan Africanism. Look, bruh, bruh, I told you, I don't care nothing about that shit, bruh. I don't care nothing about that shit. You know my stance, you know my position. I don't know why you coming over here crying, bruh. I don't care. You ain't gotta say nothing negative, but you came over here with some goofiness. That's what you did. You came over here with some goofiness. So, like I said, I don't care nothing about that stuff. Like, I talked about it. They was the one that brought it up in the comment section. They brought it up. Okay? It is goofy. They the ones brought the comment. They brought up the FBA. The main thing I said was, why don't we talk about Central West Africa in the diaspora? And you came over here with the goofy comments that you were making. You was making some goofy ass comments. And you got mad because they tore down that FBA logic that you own. I ain't even say much about the FBA. So if you was reading through the comments, you would see it was the people that brought the FBA, and they was talking more about them. I wasn't speaking much about the FBA. I was speaking much about Central West Africa and the diaspora. That's what I was speaking on. But then I did say something afterwards when you started talking about that boycotting stuff. And I gave my input on it. But like I said, I can't tell you how to identify yourself. But the thing is, you just don't want to deal with the reality of who you are, because there's a form of self-hatred that you have going on. And you trying to seek validation from other people, right? And because those people that you've been around don't validate you or support your claims or support how you feel, so now you changing and going back, or you claiming another identity because you feel some kind of way about those who you feel like mistreated you. So I'm sorry that you got some form of self-hatred going on. And I'm sorry if you don't feel like you have been validated by the African people or the Caribbean people or whatnot. But just because you feel that way doesn't mean I gotta jump on that bandwagon with you, sir. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna jump on the bandwagon. I'm not gonna be insecure like you. So okay, let me see. Let's see. The origin of Pan-Africanism was again tied to Black Back to Africa movement, which was about establishing dominance on the continent. The UN regionalism goals are part of Pan-Africanism. Hmm. Well said, in one. Well said. Mm-hmm. And so the Rastafarian movement was named after him. You can't have Pan-Africanism without. Do you know that a lot of FBAs don't identify with being Pan-Africans? You have FBAs that will tell you themselves that they are not Pan-African. So if you're going to be a Pan-African, there's no sense of being FBA, because the FBA movement does not identify with Pan-Africanism. But I digress. I'm going to let you have it. I think what he's speaking on is that humanity, as far as the Homo sapiens sapien, came up out of Africa. As far as like, you know, the origin of humanity is concerned, right? But when we talk about direct descendant, no, I agree with you that they did not, everybody did not come out of Africa as far as their genetics is concerned or their descendancy. But as far as being a Homo sapien, according to scientific studies and research, yes, they did come out of Africa. They came out of what we know today as East Africa region, according to scientific research. But then there are more bones and skeleton that's being found in places like Morocco and parts of South Africa as well. But I was raised Pan-African, and but learned over the years if Africa had one leader, it would be easier to control. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. You know, everybody want to be the boss. That's one thing we gotta learn. Everybody want to follow one leader or under one leadership. You got individuals who think they the boss and who think they can do it better. So that's human behavior. Yeah, humans share a common ancestor that came from Africa. And I'm glad that you brought that up. Pan Africanism is an ideal, can be hijacked for different purposes. I want to say this. As someone who agrees with Pan Africanism, okay, because I do, I will also admit that people have taken Pan Africanism and used it for ill intentions. All right. I can say that there's people that has taken advantage of other people under the name of Pan Africanism. That I will be honest about. And because people have taken advantage of other folks, that's why people decide to leave and start whatever organization they want to start up. But yes, there has been people that use it for different purposes. And some people are not truly Pan-Africanists. They just wear the badge because it makes them look good. But if you pull back the layers, you will find out that they have a whole different purpose. So again, I could be honest about that. I could be honest to say that there are people who have capitalized off the name of Pan-Africanism. What about Marcus Garvey? But a lot of people don't know enough about Garvey either. A lot of people don't know enough about Garvey. But I'm gonna tell you something. Let me put y'all on some secret. Garvey didn't start Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism was around when Garvey came to the United States. And he didn't identify with being a Pan-Africanist. He identified himself as a black nationalist. And the reason why was because he and Du Bois were in conflict with each other. He did not get along with Du Bois, and Du Bois did not get along with him. Now, although Du Bois was a Pan-Africanist, but in his early days, he operated from a house Negro mindset. He had a very house Negro mindset. He was doing whatever he could to get rid of Garvey, to send Garvey back to Jamaica. So I will say this: Du Bois did not get along with Garvey. Neither did he get along with Booker T. Washington. So, but yeah, a lot of people think that Garvey started Pan-Africanism. However, a lot of Marcus Garvey views align with the Pan-African views. And today, in modern time, he has become the face of Pan-Africanism because a lot of his views lines up with the Pan-African ideology. But he never claimed to be one. All right, bruh. I'm finna delete this comment. Yeah, I delete that comment. We ain't gonna do that titter tatter BS. We not gonna do that. We not gonna do that, Dunny. If you come over here with that titter nonsense, you up out of here, bruh. It's not the Pan-Africanism objective that gets hijacked. It's certain Pan-African ideology that gets hijacked. Garvey was a Freemason who used the Knights Templar garb for UNIA. Yeah, and he was also a Catholic. So I wouldn't deny that Garvey was not a Freemason, but you also know that he was a Catholic too. And from what I read, he was very, very strict. He was very strict. Maybe in the beginning, but they was falling out with each other. They was falling out. Du Bois said some harsh things about Garvey, and Garvey said some nasty things about Du Bois. And see, Du Bois, he thought education and jobs would end racism, but he found out that wasn't even the reality. He found out that was not the reality, and Garvey was trying to come up with some economic plans, business plan, but it was not as successful. In the beginning, things worked out a little bit for him, but then he started seeing that the money wasn't coming in, so a lot of his businesses wasn't successful. And then plus he went to prison for mail fraud. He was locked up in Atlanta Federal Prison, Garvey. But you know what? A lot of the movements that y'all see, they were influenced by Garvey. People like Noble Drew Ali was influenced by him. Elijah Muhammad was influenced by him. So Garvey played that role. And the main reason why Garvey came here to America because he wanted to meet Booker T. Washington. Because Booker T. Washington views align with his views. Booker T, his whole thing was do for self. Build up your own economic. While Du Bois was like, nah, let's get into politics, let's integrate, etc. You can't do for self. So Booker T opened up Tuskegee University, which is in Tuskegee, Alabama. Booker T. Washington. But anyways, Garvey came over here to America, right? He wanted to meet Booker T. However, he passed away before Garvey even had the chance to meet him. So he ended up meeting Huber Harrison, right? And Duce Ali, who happened to be, I think Duse Ali was from Sudan, if I'm not mistaken. But he played an important role in Garvey's life, and Hubert Harrison played an important role in Garvey's life as well. So they both helped him with the UNIA movement. Yep, but Garvey really wanted to meet Booker T. Washington. That was his biggest inspiration, but he passed away before he got a chance to. And see, that's another thing. People don't talk about Booker T. Washington. We don't talk enough about Booker T. A lot of people don't get in the conversation about what Booker T had done. People don't talk enough about Carter G. Woodson. Let's see. Yeah, people don't talk about Carter G. Woodson. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have Black history today. We would not be talking about Black history. He made sure that he was going to put his life on the line and gather as much information as he possibly could. He started the Negro Week. He started a journal article. He started a lot of things. And nobody know that at one point in time that he was a part of the NAACP. And he ended up getting kicked out of there because he started asking too many questions regarding to history. He said, well, why don't Black people know enough about history? Why don't y'all talk about Black history as much? And guess what? They told him he had to go. They told him he had to go because he was too radical. They told him he had to go. He was too damn radical. The NAACP was started by, well, it was founded by W.E.B. Du Bois and some Jewish people. Okay? So it was very multiracial. So by him coming over there and saying, well, hey, we need to talk about Black history. We need to bring this to the forefront. Those people was like, nah, we're not going to do all of that. So, yeah. And then you got Ontario Schomburg, who was an Afro-Puerto Rican, who studied a lot on the Afro-Puerto Rican history and Latin history in general, Black people in the Caribbean. You're not going to hear much about these folks. Mar Delaney, Henry Sylvester Williams. Yes, they did. Yes. Yes, the Moorish Science Temple of America came before the Nation Islam, yeah. But I don't think that's where it founded at. No, Moorish Science Temple wasn't founded in Detroit. It was founded in Chicago. Yeah, it was founded in Chicago. Now, the Nation Islam was founded in Detroit, not the Moorish Science Temple, because it was founded in Chicago. But yeah, and you also right, the Ahmadiyya movement. How many people know about the Ahmadiyya movement? Not a lot of people know about that. And the Shriners, they played the influence on that. As a matter of fact, the Ahmadiyya movement was named after, I think he was a Pakistani whose name was Ahmadi. So, but anyways, I think the guy that came over here, he was from India. And where he was from, they was studying the Ahmadiyya. So the Ahmadiyya movement was brought over here to places like St. Louis and I think Philadelphia and New York, I believe. But it became a strong Islamic Sufi. I don't think I want to call it Sufi, but I think they were Sufi. But yeah, they became a very popular Islamic movement in the black community. They were very popular before. This is before the Moorish Science Temple of America and Nation Islam. Yeah, they were very popular. But Kevin, you wrong. Drew Ali was from America. Noble Drew Ali was from America. He was from North Carolina. Noble Drew Ali was from North Carolina. He was from America. And Duce Ali and Noble Drew Ali did work together. No, but Noble Drew Ali was born in America. I know that for a fact. He was born in America. He was born in North Carolina. As a matter of fact, his name was Timothy Drew. That was his real name. I mean, yeah, Duce Ali. I meant to say Duce Ali worked with Garvey. Duce Ali worked with Garvey. So Garvey, like I said, Garvey was very influenced by him as well. Well, there's an argument about that. Some people say that he wasn't even from India. They say that he was a European descent. Or I think I read somewhere where he was half European and half Middle Eastern or something. I think he was half Middle Eastern and half European. But either way, yeah, they say he wasn't even from India. They say he was from a European country. Mm-mm. There's plenty of good books about Islam. Let's see. I can type it up for you. All right, hold on. Let me. So there's a book called Islam in the African American Experience by Richard Bent Turner. And then you got the Black Muslim Religion in the Nation of Islam by Edward E. Curtis. Then you have Islam and the Search for African American Nationhood by Dennis Walker. FBA was created to destroy Garvey and Drew Ali's movement. I mean FBI. You mean you sure was it the FBI or was it the CIA? Detroit NOI Study Group was originally Moorish Science Temple of America group prior to 1930. Well, rumor has it that the founder of the Nation of Islam, he was originally a student of Noble Drew Ali. Oh, he was a follower of Noble Drew Ali. So I could see that being the case. J. Edgar Hoover created the CIA. I don't think he created the FBI. Was it? Yeah. Let me see. Let me make sure. Okay, hold on. Let me get into something real quick because I think he created. I don't think he created the FBI movement. Oh, no. What it was COINTELPRO. That's what it was. COINTELPRO. Ooh, okay. Now I remember it was COINTELPRO. Yeah, J. Edgar Hoover created COINTELPRO. Yeah, that's what he created. He created the COINTELPRO. Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, Hoover was an FBI agent or a director. He was an FBI director, but he didn't create the FBI. He created COINTELPRO. That's what he did. Here's a good book, A History of Conversion to Islam in the United States, Volume 2, The African American Islamic Renaissance, 1920 to 1975 by Patrick Bowen, but it is expensive, price-wise, and full of receipts. Yeah. Yeah, it was in the 1960s, but that's what he created COINTELPRO. He didn't create FBI, though. Nah, he did not create the FBI. No, he didn't. No, he did not. No. Hold on. See, so here's the history behind it. Hold on real quick. Since we talking about the FBI movement, it wasn't created by him. Hold on. Let's get into it real quick. So it says in 1896, the National Bureau of Criminal Identification was founded, providing agency across the country with information to identify known criminals. Right. The 1901 assassination of President William McKinley created a perception that the United States was under the threat from anarchists. So the Department of Justice and Labor had been keeping records of anarchists for years, but President Theodore Roosevelt wanted more power to monitor them. Then if you go down, it says the Bureau of Investigation was created on July the 26th, 1908. Attorney General Bonaparte, using Department of Justice expenses funds, hired 34 people, including some veterans of the Secret Service, to work for a new investigative agency. It was its first chief. The title is now director was Stanley Finch. Bonaparte notified the Congress of these actions in December 1908. And it says the Bureau's first official task was visiting and making surveys of the House of Prostitution in preparation for enforcing the White Slave Traffic Act, or Mann Act, passed on June 25th of 1910. In 1932, the Bureau was renamed the United States Bureau of Investigation. So the creation of FBI. The following year, 1933, the BOI was linked to the Bureau of Prohibition and rechristened the Division of Investigation. It became an independent service within the Department of Justice in 1935. In the same year, it was officially changed from the Department of Investigation to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. All right, and it said that he served as a FBI director from 1924 to 1972, a combined 48 years with the BOI, DOI, and FBI. All right. So it never mentioned anything about him creating the FBI on here. Yeah. So yeah, he didn't create the FBI. It was already changed. He just became the first director. Oh, I believe it. I believe it. Oh boy. Let me see. Dang, I've been on here for a good 2 hours. Was it 2 hours and 4 minutes? Oh boy. hmm But yeah, all the movements that we know of today, they came out of the schools of the UNIA, right? The Ahmadiyya movement. But before the UNIA even came about, it was the churches, the black churches, that played a role in radicalism. Okay. Then you had black communists, those who were anarchists, atheists, etc., that identify with being left in communism and all of that. But yeah, the black church opened up the doors of what we call today the conscious community, right? Because the church itself, they were the original conscious community. They were the original conscious community before there was a conscious community. But nowadays, the churches are very institutionalized, and all they care about is making profit, making money, and all that stuff. That's what it's really about. But back then, a lot of church opened up doors of opportunity. They had their own businesses. They start opening up their own schools. They start, like I said, they were very radical. I'll give you a good example. Henry McNeil Turner. Henry McNeil Turner, who was a bishop from South Carolina. He was a bishop from South Carolina, but he was very radical. As a matter of fact, he was a top bishop. The top bishop at that. He's the one that said that God was a black man. Jesus was a black man. This is before Elijah, before Noble Drew Ali, before all of them, right? Before Father Divine, before Father Divine, before Father Allah, Henry McNeil Turner was one of the first bishop to say that we gonna create our own God, and Jesus will be a black man. Now you talking about somebody around the 1870s, somewhere like that, or around 1900s. He's saying that the black man is God. Jesus was black. Jesus was black. And you know what they told him? They said, oh no, you got to get the hell on with that radical ass shit. You can't come over here with that. They didn't use profanity, but they told him no. That's unacceptable. So once it got to the head bishops, you know, the top authorities over the AME church, right? They told him, no, you will not be teaching that doctrine. You're not going to go around here telling people that Jesus was a black man. You're not going to say that. No, we're not going to accept that. And Henry McNeil Turner said, I don't care, but I'm still going to say it. He was a black man. Why Jesus can't be black? Why Jesus can't be black, huh? So they told him he had to go. And he left from that part of the camp, but started his own church and still teaching that doctrine. So I'm saying this to say that a lot of people don't know that a lot of those black churches, the Christian churches, were black nationalists at one point. They were very black nationalists. And speaking of the AME church, right? The AME church came out of the heart of the Free African Society, which was started by Richard Allen and Absalom, what's his name? Absalom Jones. Yeah, Absalom Jones and Richard Allen started the Free African Society in Philadelphia. And you talking about around 1787. Okay. And from there, it was a mutual society that basically focused on giving financial aid to the African American community, you know, whether they want to start businesses for funerals and things like that. All right. So from the Free African Society came the AME Church. And the reason why they started the AME Church because they were, I think it was actually Richard Allen that started the AME Church, if I'm not mistaken, because they were dealing with so many discrimination with the Methodist Church. And by them dealing with the discrimination from the Methodist Church, they said, nah, we're not going to go for this. They was dealing with a lot of racism. They said, nah, we're not going to deal with the racism. So we're going to start our own movement. So again, they started the Free African Society. And from there, the AME Church came about, which is the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And a lot of the HBCUs, okay, they came out the heart of the AME Church. A lot of the HBCUs came out the heart of the AME Church. Yeah, a lot of them. Because you got to remember the HBCUs at the time, right? Some of them wanted to teach theology. And they was going to become a seminary schools. And then you had some HBCUs that was focused on agriculture, like like Tuskegee Institute, right? They focus more on agriculture. When you look at FAMU, Florida Agriculture and Mechanical University, that's what it stands for, right? And then when you look at A&T, A&T stand for what? Agricultural and, let me make sure, I don't want to say technology. I don't want to get that wrong. Yeah, I was right. Okay. So, like North Carolina, A&T stands for agricultural and technical. All right. So, so a lot of those schools, a lot of those HBCUs, right? And then there was some that were named after white people. White people founded them, like Howard University and Spelman College, just to name a few. Yeah, they were founded by white people as well. So, but the ones that were founded by black people, right? Their primary focus was either agriculture or seminary schools, you know, because at that time a lot of people was getting into theology, becoming ministers, pastor, or whatnot. And then you had black people that study more than one major. That's what you call polymath. Okay, a polymath is somebody who deals with multiple subjects. All right, they know multiple subjects. Well, because they want to learn how to process and grow food and things like that. Do you know the importance of the agriculture? Do you know the importance of agriculture? The importance of agriculture is basically not just producing food, but you also producing like cotton. You also producing tobacco. You producing a lot of things because that's the resource. That is the monetary value. Those are monetary values, man. You make a lucrative income when you have your own agricultural business. If you have a cotton business, that's a lot of money right there. You talking about trillions of dollars. That's $1 trillion business. And that was the purpose, to teach black people how to process their own food, grow their own food, create their own materials, right? Start their own churches, create their own business, start up their own funeral homes. You know, funeral home was a major big economic business for the black community, and it still is today. So if you notice, when you go to funeral homes, right, they are mostly owned by black people. The reason why, because that was the major source of income for African Americans. That's where a lot of African Americans were able to make a lot of profits. Open up business like the funeral home. Right. Food, clothing, and shelter are the foundation. They're the foundation. But yeah, it's so much that people don't know. If people go back into the origin of things, right, you will understand that all of these things stem from black people who were in the Abrahamic religion that opened up doors to be able to be able to have your own to be able to have your own business, to be able to have your own resources, right? And to be able to teach information, Teach about knowledge of self in a more radical sense, not just always dealing with the concept of Jesus as an invisible being, if you want to call it that, but just understand that your relationship with God is a relationship with self. You know what I'm saying? And they were able to start their own movements, right? You look at the history of the Shrine of Black Madonna, which was around since the 1970s. They started in Detroit, the Shrine of the Black Madonna. No, I want to say no, no, no. They started in the 60s, I think, the late 60s. Yeah, they started in the late 60s. Yeah. Now, here's the thing: did all these people get all the information correct at the time? No, but they created the doors of opportunities. They created the resources. They provided that. So now all these different movements that they came out the heart of those schools. I mean, they came out of those institutions. Man. And somebody put something up here. I wanted to. A lot of those original black nationalists in the 1800s had ties with the black church. The black church, once upon a time, was our social service. Yes, absolutely. That's it. That was it. But you'll never hear that. I'm trying to think. All of our street gangs like Bloods and Crips came out the Panthers. Yeah, they got their influence from the Panthers, but guess what? You had street gangs that started before the Black Panther Party even came into existence. If we're gonna talk about street gangs, right? You got a lot of them that started that came about in the 50s. They came about in the early 50s, late 50s, and they started off as neighborhood cliques. And from neighborhood cliques, they became organizations. They started with teenagers, young African American teenagers from neighborhoods, right? They want to have their own little clique. They want to have something that they can call their own. They want to have something they can organize. Because you know how it is when you have a little rivalry taking place. You got a rivalry with that neighborhood and then this neighborhood over here, etc. Like the Vice Lord, the Peace Stone Nation, the Black Disciples. What's the other one? I think Mickey Cobra. GD started in the 70s. And like you said, Bloods and Crips. A lot of these African American gangs, yeah, they started in the 70s. And then some of them started in the 50s. But yo, 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 yo. They were youth clubs, right? And then some people like to call them neighborhood cliques. You know what I'm saying? Yep, they did. Yep. Because they was influenced by the Moorish Science Temple of America's teaching. That's why. Instead of working together, they were neighborhood rivalries. Yeah, but now you got a lot of them, they're trying to bring some form of coalition. They're trying to bring those coalitions together. All right, good night to you. Thank you for coming through. But yeah, they were trying to bring some type of coalition now. As you can see, all the gangs they trying to organize. It's what the older cats. The older cats are trying to organize, but you got these youngins out here that's coming up. They rebellious, they full of energy, they full of charisma. You know what I'm saying? So some of them they trying to keep that division going, but the people that's been around for the longest, create of they trying to create a unity to where they can come together in peace. So I will say that. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Y'all give me a moment, please. Yep. So, all right. Before I close it out, I just want to say I appreciate everybody coming through here. Yeah, the chat was jumping tonight. I ain't even gonna lie. Y'all was getting it in. Y'all was getting in. Y'all was going in. Except for a few ignorant comments taking place. You got a few ignorant folks out there, but I thank you guys for coming through. Real talk. This have been a conversation that's needed to be talked about, that needs to be discussed. And I was, like I said, I'm surprised y'all really chimed in big time. Y'all really came in hard for real, though. Y'all really did. Yep. But y'all gotta understand something. History is always important because you got to know about the past in order to understand the present, in order to have a future. Again, you got to know about the past in order to have a present, in order to have a future. Because you got to know, why am I in this present moment? What was the reason why? Well, you got to go to the past. And your present is going to determine your future. Again, your present is going to determine the future. So if people don't think that history plays a role in your life, yes, it does. It plays a major role. It plays a major role in your life. So without your past, you have no reason to be in the present, and you have no reason to look for the future. And that's the whole general purpose of me speaking on this subject. That's the whole general purpose. So I hope you guys gained something out of this tonight. Thank you. You are welcome, Ronald. Thank you for coming through. Thank you, Bobo. Thank you, J-Man, N1. Let me see who else. Kevin. I know you somewhere on here, Kevin. Mr. Kevin. Kevin. And Donnie, thank you, even though you came with that goofiness, but thank you for coming through, Donnie. Let me see who else. Who else on here? What's some more people that came through? Jason, thank you for coming through, Mr. Jason. Green Soap. TT. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you guys for coming through. But I hope you all have a wonderful night. And shout out to you guys that's coming in, that's been checking out my channel. Yeah, and big up to me. Big up to me, though. Big up to me for bringing this subject to light. But now, really, real talk, I really want to thank y'all for this. But I will keep you guys posted, and we're gonna be talking more about variety of subjects. So, yeah, just be on the lookout, of course. And until next time, peace and power and elevation be to all of you. This your girl Tiffany. And I'm finna log up out of here because I can't stay up too late. So, all right. But I'll keep you guys posted. Okay. Hold on, let me read this comment. Just stumbled into your channel. Have you heard or looked up the research on the oldest iron development which came up out of West and Central West Africa? Um, I've heard about it, but I did not look too much into it. However, I do got a book that talks about the iron development and whatnot. So I have to read more into that. But no, I haven't done a thorough research on it. But I do know that the Central West African culture did play their role as far as invention and creation wise. So they have created a lot of things. They have played their role into what we call today STEM: science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So, but that's something I would have to look more into, to be honest. Let's see, 2000 BCE in Leja, Nigeria is one of the oldest sites. Okay, I will look that up. As a matter of fact, let me go ahead and put that on here so I won't forget. Leja, Nigeria. Leja, Nigeria. All right. I will look into that. Yeah, I'm gonna look into it, and then I'm gonna share some information on my channel. I mean, well, on my social media page. Okay. No worry, it gets ignored a lot, but yeah, the largest variety of iron smelting techniques unique only to Africa. Okay. Which suggests development there. I will look into that. And whatever information I find, I'm going to share on my social media page. And thank you guys for providing me sources or suggesting information that I should look into as far as books or whatnot. Um, Especially Kevin. Thank you, Kevin, for providing information, providing a lot of sources on here. Real talk. You're doing a great job at that. And thank you, Bobo, for providing a lot of information too, because there's some stuff that I did not know, that I'm not aware of. Um, I really appreciate it. All right. Thank you, data being collected. Thank you for coming through. So I'm going to go ahead and close it out. You guys have a wonderful evening a wonderful day, or whatever you stay, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for watching. And until next time, peace and power and elevation. This your girl Tiffany. And I'm calling it a night. All right, goodbye.